Who is ready for some world of antiquity? Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Do I have everything working all right? Can you hear me okay? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Hey there, Pete. Hey, Pluto Planet. Puhu, Nano. Pit Tuk. All right. Everything works. All right. I'm glad to hear it. Well, thanks for coming to my second ever live stream. And I hope that you're going to like my guest today. He's coming on at 2. So, but for the first half hour, what we'll do is we'll just have viewer questions. I know some of you want to ask me some things. And so we'll do that. So, who is Destiny? Oh, that is my guest for today. You'll find out more about him when he comes on at 2. But he is basically a live streamer. Yeah. So, I want to tell you, I have a little bit of an announcement. Okay, so here's the announcement. You want to hear it? So, last week, I went to Los Angeles for a special occasion, and the special occasion was I was invited to be a talking head on a TV show. And I think I may have mentioned this last live stream, but I didn't tell you what the TV show was. But now I'm going to, okay? Yeah, I got the call from The Unexplained with William Shatner. Are you aware of the show? Yes. Anyway, they wanted me to answer some questions on the show. So they flew me out there, and yeah, I gave the interview. It was all about Baalbek and a few other sites. Basically, ancient mysteries is what they're doing an episode on, and so it's going to be on in June, and I'll give you the info a little bit later. Well, not today because I don't have it yet, but when they give me an air date, I'll tell you when it's on. Yeah, and no, I did not meet William Shatner. In fact, I didn't meet anyone else that was on the show. They just was just the crew and me. But yeah, they did exactly what you'd think. They sat me in front of a bookshelf, and I gave my interview there. Yeah. What do you think of the Hyperborea myth gaining steam in pseudoscience circles? Hyperboreans, yes. Well, you know, the pseudo archaeology and pseudo history love myths, and Hyperborea is just another one of those. But it was a story going around among the ancient Greeks that there was this people that lived way far to the north, and there's all kinds of different stories depending on who you talk to them. It's just gossip people heard around. Some say they were mare milkers, which is kind of interesting because they did find out that people up in northern Central Asia did milk their horses, so maybe that part of it was true. But they just give the general name Hyperborea to that area, not knowing really a lot of details about it. What's the topic of debate? We're not debating, we're having a nice, friendly chat. That's it. But we're going to talk about information gathering on the internet. Yes, that's that too. We'll talk about how not to be fooled by bad information, because that's something that we're both interested in. And it was very nice of Destiny to do this, because he's a lot bigger than I am, and he's helped giving me a little boost by this. Sobek, thank you very much for your super chat, but I don't know why you super chatted a piece of poo, but thank you anyway. You were on The Unexplained. This season has kind of sucked IMO, so seeing you will probably be a huge highlight. I hope so. I don't know. I don't even know what other talking heads are going to be on that particular episode. When did the idea of meditating appear? Ooh, man, that's a good one. Well, when does it appear in written sources? As probably the only answerable question, and I don't even know the answer to that. But it would have been quite early. Yes, and I think probably would have been from India. but I couldn't give you the source. That I do not know. Would love more debunking of ancient aliens. They have so many seasons to disprove. Yeah, I could definitely do more. I've been sticking to YouTube only because it's easier to do other YouTube videos, but and Ancient Aliens did give me a copyright infringement. What do you call it? They made a claim on the last time I used them, but I won it. So maybe winning it once, I could win it again. You know. Did you check the bookshelf? Probably full of Ancient Aliens books. I didn't see any Ancient Aliens books on the bookshelf, but I didn't take a really good look. It is the same producers. I should say the same production company. I don't know if it's the same people. How do you feel about alternate history channels as in alternate timelines? What if the Romans didn't exist, etc.? Oh, that kind of alternate. Oh, yeah, the what ifs. Well, those are always fun to speculate, you know. What if this never happened? What if that never happened? And how would our world look different? Those are always fun. I don't really watch a lot of that stuff, but I have no issue with it. What is the most impressive? Oh, so why Dave? Why David? Why is my name David? I don't understand what that's a follow-up to, guy. What is the most impressive ancient technology you appreciate and why? Well, you know, I did a video recently on the Antikythera mechanism. That's quite a piece of ancient technology. Very impressive. I appreciate that very much because it shows what the ancients were capable of, but also, not just in the making of it, the knowledge that they would have had. That's one of my favorites. What do you think of the vibes of cosmos material? I'm not sure what that is, Ian. But our moon and stars and planet, but somehow somewhat relevant to our human experience, I feel. I don't know about vibes of cosmos. Something I still haven't seen. What city am I from? Well, where do I live right now? I live in Bradenton, Florida, in the United States. But before that, I lived in San Diego, and I'm originally from the area around Buffalo, New York. That's probably where my accent comes from or something. Of course, from my point of view, you all have accents and I don't. Religion for Breakfast has made a great video on meditation quite recently. Oh, thanks, Nabalia. Let's see. What is your name, David, though? Funny. Any interest in doing video on African Sumerians and relationship with Egypt? As far as I'm aware, I don't know of any Sumerian colonies in Egypt. I have heard people make this claim before, but I haven't really actually seen any evidence for it, other than people saying like, "Oh, look at this! Doesn't it look kind of like it's Sumerian?" But I do know the Sumerians probably traded with Africa. They traded with Egypt, for example. Because we have evidence for, items from each culture going back and forth. So I do know that happened. But as far as Sumerians actually coming and setting up in Egypt, if that's what you're talking about, I don't know much about any of that. Let's see. Hello, love your videos. What is your favorite ancient text? Which text was most interesting to you? Favorite ancient text? That's a good one. My favorite ancient text. Well, there's, that's really a tough one. Because ancient texts tend to be short, and there's so many of them that, like, okay, this inscription, which is like a paragraph long, is that going to be my favorite text? I don't know. I mean, I could go the easy route and just say, the Bible, because it has like so many books in it. Of course, it wasn't originally a single book. It was a bunch of smaller books too, So I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if I have a favorite. Are you familiar with the Shepherd of Hermas? Any thoughts? I am familiar with the Shepherd of Hermas. Actually, technically, the title is just The Shepherd, but the guy Hermas wrote it. Well, it's interesting because among some of the early Christians, it was a canonical book of the Bible, but not all, and it didn't ultimately make the cut. But it does have some interesting things in it. Sumerians are Caucasians, smiley face. No, they're not. I'm sorry, Poohoo. They're not Caucasians. As a matter of fact, I may have done a video on this, but Sumerians were not Caucasians. We actually, well, I shouldn't say they are not anything or they are anything because we haven't really been able to trace them. But there's no evidence that they're Caucasians. Let's say that. And there's no evidence that they're anything else. We can't really figure out where they came from. Yeah. Do you think the Emperor Qin's tomb will ever be opened? I do. I just know that the Chinese archaeologists are going very slowly on it. They're working their way to the pyramid. And boy, they will get to it. It may take some years. They will get to it. And then it will be quite a discovery. I think that whatever they find in there is going to be amazing. Confirm this for us. Is it true the soil in the UK is full of Roman coins? Well, they keep finding them. I would expect there probably is more to be found. I don't know how much, but I'm sure there's definitely quite a lot. Do you think the Gutians in the Akkadian story were an Elamite people or Proto-Iranic? Ooh, getting down deep on that one. I don't have a strong opinion on this. I do know there are some debates about this. We know that the ancient Mesopotamians had to deal with problems from the Gutians. Problems from the Gutians. And Elam was in Iran, right? So when we say Proto-Iranic or Elamite, it's kind of splitting hairs. They're kind of in the same area. But I honestly don't have a strong opinion, Liquid's back. Sorry about that. Do you think the Harappan script is a real language? You know, there is some people who argue that it's just symbols and it's not a written language at all, right? And the reason being because we don't have any really long inscriptions. I don't think there's anything longer than a line or two. You know, it's like most are just a few symbols on various objects. And you wonder, is it really a language that's being written here? I don't know for sure. My inclination is to think that yes, it is writing, but I could be proven wrong. What we do know is that the Harappan civilization had a language. We just don't know if that script represents it. Did you solve the spam bot problem from last week? I hope so. We'll find out. Well, I didn't actually do anything special, but I did add a couple of security features on here that hopefully will help. Like, for example, your comments have a you can't make two comments right in a row. You have to wait 30 seconds. But yeah. Let's see. Okay, we got a bunch more stuff. Let's see. You self-owned yourself. I self-owned myself with that Robert Seppert video. It's Sepper, I believe. That guy was more right than you said. Lost some respect with the name calling. I didn't name call him anywhere in the video, but I did in the original thumbnail, which I took down. But most people whom I didn't even say anything to, who never even saw that original thumbnail, have come to similar conclusions. But anyway, the video itself only talked about his arguments. I don't know how I self-owned myself. You'd have to be more specific on that. Local Floridian since 1958 via Ohio. Well, Lee, great to hear that. 3-year-old, yes, I'm a native Space Coast dude. All right, you're not far away from me, although you're probably on the opposite coast. Yes. Let's see. This channel's still underrated, though. Well, thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate you saying that, Bad Energy Troll. The Gutians were straight up barbarians, speaking barbar. Yes, that's where the name barbarians comes from, as Quantum Chill says there. Bar. Greeks making fun of how people talked. Thoughts on the recently discovered footprints in the American Southwest that point towards humans there thousands of years earlier than is normally given credence. I should speak more clearly because not everyone probably can see the chat. But, well, Glenn, you know, I've had a lot of people say about that, see, That just goes to show that archaeologists are wrong. You can't trust anything they said. They said Clovis first, and look at, we found these footprints. One of the things I've noticed about the footprint find is that it has swayed quite a few opinions of archaeologists. So the consensus on that has shifted as a result of the footprint find. See, it always takes it just takes time. You gather up a sufficient evidence to prove a point, and eventually you tilt the scale, and that's exactly what happened in this case. Do you think that Etruscans may have been related to the Linear A Minoan-like language family? Maybe. There are another people whose script we haven't been able to decipher. Actually, the Minoans either. So until we decipher either one of them, or both, we won't really know the answer to that question. But hey, they're both in the Mediterranean. You never know, right? Why did my question get skipped twice? Alexis, I didn't catch it. You know, it's hard to keep track here, but you want to ask again? I'll look out for it next time. Hello from Oklahoma. Thank you very much. Do you think Linear A/B will ever be deciphered? Well, Linear B was deciphered, and it was Greek, so that we know. But Linear A, I think we need to find more examples of it. One of the problems is we don't have any long inscriptions of that one either. If we find a long inscription, it'll be a lot easier. Yeah. Robert is about to drop a video disproving the out of Africa theory. You should do a review of it. Well, that is more prehistory, Jaden. So Stefan Milo would be the guy to go to for that one. Ask him to respond to it. Let's see. What's the likelihood Israelis got their one God religion and Exodus story as followers of Akhenaten? Well, the theory that you just mentioned goes back to, believe it or not, Sigmund Freud. Yes, the psychologist. He's the one who came up with that. But I do know that one of my professors believes that is a reasonable explanation. If anyone's wondering what that all is about, Akhenaten is the world's earliest known monotheist as far as contemporary writings. And so some people thought, well, if Moses grew up in Egypt, then maybe he got the idea from Akhenaten. It's just a guess, you know. We have no way of proving any of that. Let's see. The ancient Greeks seem to have very odd senses / cognition. They mangled all foreign / barbarian languages, names of pharaohs, and had no word for blue. Wine dark seas. Well, Paul, everybody did that. It's more of a modern phenomenon, really, where we try to get people's names right in other languages, right? Even 50 years ago, if someone came from France or whatever, and they said, "Oh, I am Pierre," and they moved here, we'd probably call him Peter. Peter doesn't sound anything like Pierre, but it's the English equivalent, you know what I'm saying? So the Greeks are just doing things with names to make it sound more Greek, you know? And it's similar, but it isn't really all that close. Because, you know, they just figure, let's put it into our language. So they just put it into their language. A video on how we decipher ancient languages sounds really cool. I did one on cuneiform that you might be interested in, but I haven't done any more. That's a good idea. And maybe I could do just about it in general, right? Yeah, I gotta say, thanks for clarifying the ancient high technology debacles. Your narrative seems very much more rational, logical against their no proof proofs. I try. One of the things that I want to make sure we get away from on this channel, and including me, but also all of my loyal followers, viewers, I should say, is we're not on a team, right? So we're not fighting team sports. This is one of the things I don't like about the alternative ancient history people. Some of them is, and especially some of their devotees. Okay, it's like we're on a team and we got to fight for our team, right? And it's like sports, you know. And we root for our team, and so we want to score points against the other side and all of that. I try not to do that, right? I don't want to do that. I want to be like, we're just trying to find out what happened. Okay. Now, yeah, I don't believe this, and here's why I don't believe it. All right, but we're not going for like, you know, I'm gonna score a win against you. You know, I don't want to do that. Um. Okay, so I don't even remember where I left off here, but yeah. Puhu, or Matthias, would the historical Jesus recognize himself from the Gospels? It's a good question. It's a good question. Even the contemporary writings, like let's say someone did a newspaper article on you, a newspaper. I'm dating myself, but you know, let's say they did an article on you on the internet. Would you recognize yourself? um, so kind of probably a similar question. Under what circumstances can we accept experimental archaeology results as evidence? Well, I would say experimental archaeology can definitely answer the question, is it possible for them to have made this, right? But we don't know for sure if that's the exact way they did it, right? Because if you don't have all the information, you're just trying it out. Like, let's try to make it this way. You could also make it a different way, right? There could be different ways to make it. So you're really only answering the question, could they do it? But trying to figure out whether that is really the way they did it is a whole other ball game. And you could do it that way, but it'd be hard to prove, right? It'd be very hard to prove. What kinds of online classes are you thinking about offering? Price range. Man, I have been working on an online class for months now, but because the videos on the channel take up so much time, I hardly have any time to finish it, and I've been really wanting to, you know. So the one I'm working on is called Ancient Explorers, and it's all about exploring the world before, you know, well, not just before Columbus. I was going to say before Columbus, but before, you know, ancient times ended. It's just in ancient times, exploration in ancient times. And it talks about not only what the Greeks and the Romans explored, but also the Chinese, the Indians, everybody from the sources that we have. So that's my first one, and I'm working on it. Don't have a price yet on it, but I'll let you know when I know. Yeah. Okay, we got a super chat. Thank you, Appalachia Run. I appreciate that. Can I ask you about the future? Well, I don't have a time machine. As a historian, where do you see humanity eventually ending up, say 100 years in the future, 1,000 years? Ooh. See, yeah, I'm an expert on the past, and not even the recent past. So asking me a question about the future, this is not something I'm really good at answering. But I will say from my experience studying the ancient past is that it's unlikely that the United States and the current countries are going to be around in 1,000 years. Some of them will be around in 100 years, but 1,000, highly unlikely, just by the way the things go, you know. Yeah. Do you think... Oh, Irvin Finkel, I don't even know, you're probably answering somebody else's question here. Do you think the crisis of the 3rd century could be tied with Han China, Kushan Empire, and Parthia as it is for Rome? Maybe. I mean, today, because we're so more interlocked, the countries, when one has a crisis, the other ones have crises too. But in ancient times, they were a little bit more isolated. I will say this, though. Han China did have a crisis in the 3rd century, so we know that's true. Oh, do you think they're tied together, maybe? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think there was quite enough contact for that to be the case. But with trade relations, there were trade relations going through all of them. Economically, it is possible that there was influence from one to the other. Politically, not as much. Oh, is Ancient Architects here? Yes, he is. And you've got COVID. Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that, Ancient Architects. Let's see. Irvin Finkel is Mesopotamian Gandalf. Isn't it Irving Finkel? Is it Irvin or Irving? I thought it was Irving, but it could be Irvin. Thanks for addressing my question. Love your channel. Look forward to every new video and hoping to see some more debunking videos. Those ones take the most time, Benjamin. They're harder. Is Destiny having issues preventing them from being here? Destiny is going to be here at 2. That's 5 minutes, everybody. We're bringing Destiny on. 5 minutes. Yeah. Your views on the Chola Empire. Well, Aditya, I think I'd have to do a whole video on that. I'm not sure what specific question you may have. It's a little too general for me. You got to get a little bit more specific. Have you seen the mummies with cocaine found in their system? I haven't seen them, but I know about them. And in fact, I was going to do a video on the cocaine mummies. I was all ready to do a video. But as I researched the issue, I found that the jury's still out. We need some verification. There's like one series of tests that occurred, and that's it. We need other evidences before we could say anything about it, right? So, yeah, one study is just not enough to hang a hat on, you know? Do you realize that Destiny is known for some pretty bad stuff online? I do, Alexis. I hope was that your question from before? But those things are mostly not true. If you mean pretty bad, then they're definitely not true. But he does have a mouth on him, that's for sure, which we're going to benefit from in a couple of minutes. As a matter of fact, maybe I should just make sure that he's ready to come on here. I've never done this. We're doing simultaneous live. So he's doing a live stream with me on it, and I'm doing a live stream with him on it. And so, yeah. So let me see if I can connect to where he is without you hearing his sound. Actually, you probably can hear his sound. Did you hear that? If you heard that, then I'm not doing it right. But no one's answering just yet. Okay. Well, we got 3 minutes, so let's hang on a second. But I should be able to do it pretty quickly. I fell in like with history with Kaylee. Thank you, Doctor. Oh. Kaylee's very nice. Very nice. Yes. Destiny the debate bro? Yes, but we're not going to debate him here today. Sir, who were the Ganges Bellin River Valley people who started agriculture, specifically rice cultivation, like Lahore Dewa, Chopani Mando, etc., Neolithic sites before arriving Indus culture? That is prehistory, and I really don't know a whole lot about it, Asif. I'm sorry to say. It is something that I probably should know a little bit more about because it does directly precede, the development of civilization and all that. So I just don't know on that one. So, please explain, could granite be rounded and carved about 1,000 years ago? The answer is a resounding yes, it could. Yeah. Are you strong with the Dead Sea Scrolls force? Do you mean, do I know a lot about the Dead Sea Scrolls? And the answer to that is yes, I do. Do you think humans were happier as hunter-gatherers? They may very well have been. Now, we don't really know. We can't poll them. But there's no reason to think that you need cities in order to be happy. And in many ways, although cities gave great conveniences to people, it also gave them some bad things, too. The spread of disease, for example, would be one of them. Bad health definitely went down when cities came to be because they didn't know what to expect. Now you got all these people living together. You don't know where to throw the trash. It's going to cause some problems. What are your thoughts on Emperor Aurelian? I just went by. Sorry about that. $4.99. Thank you, Anticlimacus. Thank you for being such an excellent educator. There aren't enough people like you. Thank you. I appreciate that. By the way, we're going to, when I'm talking to Destiny now, I can't really answer all your questions, but you can save some questions for the end, and I'll be happy to bring you in at that time. So let's see if we can hook up with him right now. He's playing a video game, as you can see here. Let me, I hope he didn't forget. Are you hearing his sound, or am I only hearing his sound? Let me know. I hope I'm only hearing his sound. No one is answering. Why not hearing it here? Okay, only me. Okay, good. All right. I have to send him a quick message because he doesn't seem to be looking for me. So let me do that. I'm going to send him a quick message here. Let's make sure he didn't send me a message. He did. 5 minutes ago. Do you have Discord? I don't have to. Well, I do have Discord, but I don't know how to set it up. Let me just... Okay. So I just let him know that I don't have Discord. I mean, I do have Discord. Maybe he's going to force me to use the Discord. I don't know. In which case, I probably should open my Discord. Just bear with me as I set things up here, folks. Let's see what he says. I don't think I'm even part of his Discord. That's the thing. Why Destiny? He's not what I would consider intellectually honest. He's very intellectually honest. I am happy to inform you. Aspen! Wow, thank you very much for that super chat. Appreciate it very much. Okay, let's see if he got my message. No response just yet. Okay, I'll answer a couple more questions until I hear from him. Tell him you're a boomer. It'll make it easier. You have a mechanical keyboard? Oh, really? What kind of a keyboard should I have? I guess I am a boomer. Yes. Can you find someone to set up a Discord for you? Would be really interesting to get to interact that way. Well, maybe for my next live stream. I don't know if I can do it on the fly here. I'm kind of surprised at the choice of guests. He's done some bad stuff, and there's proof that is easy to find. I have heard all the rumors, Alexis, and I don't think they hold up to scrutiny. Although maybe there's some things that you don't like about him that just don't bother me. I don't know. Why have Discord when you can have a cord? Let's see. Everybody wants to talk about Destiny. Let me see if he has responded. Whoops. Yes, he has. He says, okay, yeah, sure. Do you want to just send me a Hangouts link or something? I don't even know what that is. I'm really showing my age here, I guess. Here's the link to my stream. I'll give him that. I don't know what Hangouts is. I really don't. So let me get the stream link here from YouTube. Could someone just put the link in the chat so I can just copy paste it? Well, I guess I can go get it. Thanks for hanging in there. Just give me a chance to set this up. Okay. And boom. I'm a newbie. You know, it's only my second live stream ever. Adam on Friends Reunited or MySpace. Yeah, I could do that. I want to talk about ancient Canaanite religion. Ah, well, maybe sometime we can, Mr. Monster. I think some people here may take streamer drama too seriously. That could very well be. Could very well be. We're not going to talk about anything all that controversial here, except to maybe some of the alternative history crowd. Okay. I'm going to go and look at his live stream again and see what he is up to. Maybe he knows. He probably knows something that I don't know about setting this up. That's going to make this hard for me. Oh, you can see me. Okay, I'm on his stream. Let's see what this does. Oh, there's quite a delay. There's quite a delay. I do have Skype. I have Skype and Zoom. Let's try that. Sorry, I thought this would be a little bit easier. Let me go back to... Okay, so I think I'm gonna have to Skype him. Let's do Skype. Hang in there, folks. All right, I'm turning on my Skype, everybody. Let's see if this works. I appreciate you being patient with me on this. Once I get good at this, it's going to flow so smooth, you're going to be just impressed. But not today. Okay, get the Skype going. He's got me up on his channel at delayed, but for some reason Skype's not. Why? Why is my Skype not opening? Oh, I'm already connected. I'm already for some reason my Skype is not opening when I double click on it. Why? Why isn't it opening? You do have me on Skype. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, I'll let you know when I have it open, but I'm double clicking on the Skype and nothing is happening. I don't know why. Is it the OBS that's preventing it from opening? I don't get it. Why is my Skype not opening? Shouldn't do that. Can you do Zoom, Destiny? Or no? Do you not have Zoom? Okay. Yeah, I will email you a Zoom link. I'm setting up a Zoom meeting right now, and I will send you the link. Just give me 2-3 minutes here, people. Something is interfering with my Zoom is not opening either. This is ridiculous. It says connecting and it's just not doing anything. Come on, man. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Okay. Okay, here we go. All right, so let me get a... Here we go, copy link. All right, I just sent you the link, Steven. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Okay, we just have to hit him to log in, and then we're all good to go. I think we're all set. As soon as he gets into Zoom, we should be good to go. That's how Kaylee connected last week, so I know I can do it. All right. In the meantime, let's take a look at some more comments here. Tech history we're witness to. I'm loving these. I haven't seen the replies. They're probably funny. Yeah. Every time you invent a new technology, you invent a new problem, too. That is so true. Dr. Miano and Gavin McInnes, my go-tos for history and humor, respectively. Apparently Destiny has you both. Bizarre. Clearly the lizard people are preventing you from spreading the truth. Yes, it is the lizard people, I'm sure. I turned off his stream on my browser because I didn't want it to interfere with him connecting to Zoom. So I'm not sure where he is right now in the signing on process, but hopefully in a minute. All right. You can just email the link. I did. I emailed him the link. So as soon as he sees it, he will log in, I'm sure. Taking you all to buy some Guinness with me to settle into the interview with Destiny. Showing off a wee bit. Oh, that's very nice, Ian. We love our boomer friends here. Okay. I'm up on Destiny's screen now, Principled Uncertainty. Thank you. That's good to know. Oh, there he is. I have to let him in. Duh. That's what I did last time, too. I forgot to admit her. There he is. Sorry about that, Destiny. Thanks for using...
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, let me get you up on my screen and then we'll be good to go. All right. What we want to do is crop you a little bit. Bring it down here. I'm going to move myself a little bit to get us both on here. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm new to this. This is only my second ever live stream. That's why, all this hassle.
Oh, well, hey, I'm honored to be the number 2.
Yes, well, thank you for joining us. For everyone on my channel who doesn't know doesn't know Destiny, Destiny is a streamer. He talks about current events, social issues, government, economics, you name it, and he plays video games while doing it. But he also, and this is the reason why I'm having him on the channel here, is he wants always to be right about everything. And when I say that, I don't mean that he doesn't like to admit he's wrong. I mean he actually literally wants to be correct. And you could easily be wrong these days when gathering information. So I asked him to come on here to talk about how he gathers information. Now, he's not a historian, but he does have to look things up, what happened in the past here or there. And I was hoping that he could share with us some of his thoughts on information gathering and how to avoid misinformation. So thanks for coming on this smaller channel, Destiny. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let me ask you right off the bat, what have you learned through your experiences about the pitfalls of information gathering on the internet?
I mean, I've learned a ton. I would say that probably over the last 4 or 5 years, especially, I think like information literacy and propaganda and fake news has kind of been like one of the center conversation topics in American political discourse, probably worldwide political discourse, but yeah.
Yeah. Now with us, I don't know. I do a lot of debunking of YouTube videos about ancient history, but a lot of the same principles apply to both, right? Where are you getting your information from? How do you know this to be true? And it's easy to be misled. There's more YouTube videos with bad history in them than there are YouTube videos with good history. So keeping that in mind as we go forward, what would you say is the difference between passive information gathering and active information gathering, and which is better?
Yeah, I don't. Are you pulling this from one of my combos, or is this like a real thing?
No. When I first approached you, I wanted. Yeah, I pulled this from what you talked to that class about.
I got you. Okay, I was just making sure. I would say that's kind of funny if it's something that other people talk about. I guess like in my own head, I've kind of got like a way that I categorize like how people like gather information, and whether information you've got is like good or bad. There's like broadly speaking, when people say that they've done research on a topic, I notice that when people say they've done research, what they really mean is there's like a podcast they listen to, and that podcast has talked about like a topic that they are saying that they've researched. Depending on what you're listening to, sometimes this can be good. So like if you listen to specialty podcasts that cover certain things like economics or medicine or history, that's not the worst thing in the world. But oftentimes we kind of blend together entertainment and political information into, this term must have been coined like 20 years ago, edutainment, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But basically this idea that people will listen to things, when I was growing up, it was The Daily Show, where people would listen to things and they would kind of like say like, yeah, this is like comedy and for fun, but not really. People were engaging with this for like their political information, like truly. So yeah, I think it's important to know that like if if most of your political opinions or understandings are coming from kind of like things that you're passively being shown in social media feeds, you have to understand that there is a high degree of curation going on for that. Like you are seeing what somebody wants you to see, and it's usually something that's fitting the theme of the particular group that you're in. So you should expect that your worldview is going to be molded accordingly. If I join like a far right or a far left social media group, I should expect that regardless of the reality of what's happening in the world, I'm going to be seeing information that's going to kind of like coincide with one of those two views and reinforce one of those two views of the world.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when we're just I get a lot of people saying things like, "Well, I've done my own research. I've done my own research on this. I know. Trust me. I have the answers." But then when you try to explore what they've actually researched, you find that they didn't really dig that deeply, or they just go to one side or something like that.
Yeah, and I've done it a couple times, and I don't usually like to because it's a very aggressive like debate technique. But there have been a couple times on stream where I'm like, okay, you said you've done your research. I'm curious, how do you do research? Let's go. And I really like to watch a person, and it's nerve-wracking to put them on the spot, but I like to watch like how do you search for information? How do you come up with like your search queries, and then how do you figure out like what you read and what you don't read? That's something that's like very interesting to me, because I'll see people do things and I'll hear them say things sometimes, and just by listening to them talk, I can already tell that their engagement with media or information is not really that good. A really good example that I heard the other day when I was chatting with somebody, we were talking about, I think coronavirus stuff came up, and he started to Google stuff, and I could listen to him. He was speaking to himself as he scrolls through, and he was saying things like, okay, well, this is like Washington Post. That's not a good source. This is New York Post. This is not a good, this is an okay source. And it was funny because he was calling out, we were looking for something medically related. And he was saying that the articles themselves, like the publications, were good or bad sources. Now, if you have a bit of a higher engagement with these topics, it doesn't really matter what media publication we're looking at, because what we're really looking at is the study they're referencing, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody were to tell me, like, I know that, I'm not trying to do the most contentious topics, I'm sorry, but just what I'm familiar with. If somebody says something like, I know that ivermectin is a very effective therapy for COVID-19, I'll go, oh, that's interesting. Like, well, like, how do you know? And it's like, oh, well, like my source for this is like the Washington Post or the New York Post or, Fox News or whatever. It's like, okay, that's not really a source for medical information. Like, link me the article and then we can click through to the study you're talking about. But when people just say that, I can kind of tell, like, this is the level of engagement they have with these particular topics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar with what I do. Someone will have heard something. They may have seen an article published on anybody's website saying whatever was found archaeologically or whatever. And they'll just say, oh, see, that's what happened. But then you have to go to that source and say, well, where are they getting it from, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to go back 2 or 3 times to get to the original source. Yeah. Because people just keep repeating things. But yeah, it can happen. And but also, even when we're doing active information gathering and we're trying to be good about it, we still are biased ourselves, right? How do you remain honest when doing that? Like, are you inclined to want to find things that prove a point that you believe in? Or are you completely 100% open about, well, whatever I find, I find?
I think that this is important for every single aspect, every facet of your life. This is important, but especially for this. I think this step 1 is honesty. You should always be honest with yourself about everything you do, especially in regards to information gathering, but you have to be honest with yourself. I think that some people in their naivety will try to say, like, okay, I'm going to be unbiased when I search for things. You're not. You're not unbiased. You always are going to lean a particular way. You're always going to want a particular outcome. And I think instead of trying to be unbiased, it's really good to just be aware of those biases. So like, if I'm honest, if Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson are talking about like political or historical things, I don't like either of these people. And I know that when they're saying things, I want them to be wrong. I really do. I super want them to be wrong because I don't like them emotionally. Just it feels good whenever I can like call them out on things. But if I'm researching something that they've said, I'll be aware of that. Like, okay, Jordan Peterson said this thing. I bet he's wrong. I'm going to go Google it. But if I'm aware that I don't like him and I'm aware that I have that bias, it'll help me structure my searches a bit better so that I'm not literally just looking for information that agrees with me. Let's say Jordan Peterson says that, oh, well, I claim that X is bad. And I go, oh, I bet he's lying. I'm going to go into Google and I'm going to type in studies showing X good. That would be beyond stupid, because if I have a prompt like that, I'm only going to come across the information that's going to agree with me. And I know that I'm biased against him. So I know that I'm only going to read the stuff that I agree with. So I think it's good to be aware of your biases so that when you're doing searches, you can make sure that, like, okay, let me make sure I'm doing honest searches, looking for information contrary to what I believe, information contrary to what I want to believe. And as long as you're kind of aware of that, hopefully you can be honest with yourself and keep those biases in check. And sometimes you'll even come across like, surprising stuff that maybe you wouldn't have known before. I remember that Jordan Peterson was on a Joe Rogan podcast talking about like an all meat diet. And like for so many reasons, it just seems like such a stupid thing, like an all meat diet. And I wanted to hop on Twitter and, attack him because it's fun to attack people and blah, blah, blah. But I'm always careful before I attack. I was like, okay, well, let's make sure that like, is this actually like crazy? So I started Googling, positive benefits, all meat diet, sustainable, all meat diet, health effects. And I actually came across a lot of really surprising information that it might be possible to live on all meat diets, but you have to eat like non-standard, like you have to eat like liver and other parts of the animal that you wouldn't normally. Like you're not only eating like sirloin steaks all day. So that's an example of like, I have a person, I don't like them much, but I look for information beforehand. And then instead of making myself look like an idiot, I, do the proper reading and then I don't tweet out something that would have been completely wrong otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you do consider counter arguments to a position that you might be inclined to believe, you've heard of these expressions, straw manning and steel manning. Mm-hmm. Do you think steel manning is important when you're considering a counter argument?
Yeah, if you haven't steel manned the other argument, you haven't even begun to make your own argument. This is something I tell people all the time. If you can't argue, I can argue both sides of any topic better than most people that I argue against. But that's like a requirement for me to understand my position. If you can't give the best faith version critique of your own argument and then have a counter to it, then you don't even truly know your argument. You're just hoping that you come up against a lot of like uninformed people,
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also incredibly important because not only does steel manning an opposition argument give you a better understanding of your argument, it also shows that you can understand in good faith what the other side is arguing. Like, I'm not a big fan of like blue lives matter, thin blue line stuff. But if somebody were to say like, well, what does that stand for? And I would say, oh, well, these are just fascists that hate black people. That's not a very good faith engagement with what they think. That's demonstrating not only a lack of understanding of their position, but you probably don't even have the best understanding of your own position because you haven't honestly heard any critiques of it. So yeah, when I run up against people that haven't like critically engaged with the opposition argument to what they believe, it makes me think that their own position probably isn't very informed. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you are researching a topic, is the way that you ask questions important?
It can be. It's super going to depend on the topic. Yeah. I think the example that I used in that classroom discussion was like crime stats can be like an incredibly difficult thing to sort through because the right question is going to be more important than an answer sometimes. Like, who commits more crime? Well, okay, well, is it this group of people or this group of people? Well, okay, well, how about who commits more crime per capita? That's probably a better question. Well, but is that even the best? Maybe it's who commits more crime per capita broken down by age, because an older skewing population is probably going to commit less crime. Then it might be by like geographic location, right? Because people might be more like there's a whole bunch of questions you can ask. It's going to depend on the particular question that you're asking, or it's going to depend on the particular topic that you're researching. But yeah, sometimes asking the right question can be really important. Something that I'm sure you say that you deal with when you say ancient history, are we talking like dinosaurs or are we talking?
No, that's prehistory. No, I'm talking about everything from like the rise of civilization to, up through Egypt, the Greeks, the Romans, ancient India, ancient China, but to about maybe the year 600 of the Common Era, and then it stops. Then it goes into medieval stuff, So anything.
Okay. In that, so like from like 10,000 years ago to about like 6,000 or 600.
But maybe even shorter. Maybe like 6,000 years ago up until then. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So like something related to. I imagine this probably comes up a lot with all history stuff. But one thing that I noticed, this is like a really important question to ask, is sometimes people will point out, did you know that XYZ people did like XYZ thing? And sometimes that can be really shocking. And you might ask questions like, well, did they really? Was this common? Blah, blah, blah. Sometimes the most important question to ask is unrelated to them. It might be, well, did other people do XYZ thing? And that might be a little bit more elucidating than just, somebody might point out that a long time ago, some people performed something that seemed pretty barbaric. And it's like, wow, that's horrible. Those people must be bad. But if you start asking like peripheral questions, like, well, hold on, what was the standard at the time? Like, how did most people, okay, well, contextually, now this seems a little bit different. Maybe still not good by today's standards, but maybe a little bit more common in that particular era, you know?
It's funny that you bring that up because I do get people commenting about they have variations of like my people are better than your people. You know, I mean, we're talking about
Sure. Yeah.
things that happened
Basically. Yeah.
thousands of years ago. Like, look at these massacres that your people committed, and etc. You know, and then like, well, what about you know? I mean, everybody was doing terrible things.
Mhm.
So yeah. When you read an article, let's say it's a science paper or something like that, how do you go through it? Some people just read the title and then they're kind of like the abstract and then they're done. Is that how do you read a science paper?
It's super going to depend on what the subject matter is. Because like depending on what it is, I'm just not going to be able to get through the information, right? If I'm reading
Yeah,
like
yeah,
some like neurological research paper, you know, like or
yeah,
there might be
yeah.
stuff that I
Yeah.
just mhm.
It's
um yeah,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I sometimes come across where people will take the data tables but disregard everything that the scientists say. So they don't care what the
Ooh.
scientists' conclusions are. They
Mhm.
only take the data, right? Have you ever seen that
Uh-huh.
done before?
Yeah, I had I'm trying to remember. I love my audience. I'm so grateful that I have an audience that holds me to check on things like this. But I've talked about people doing that in the past. I might have even done like, oh, well, look at this chart, look at this graph. I had a PhD researcher email me, and he said that one of his biggest pet peeves were people that would pull one chart out of a study and try to reinterpret that chart based on like um wait, oh my God, I just had a random thing playing my computer. Sorry. Some people would pull like a chart out of a study and they would reinterpret the conclusions of that study away from what the actual author said.
Mm-hmm.
And his thing was you have to be incredibly careful when doing that because drawing conclusions from data is oftentimes way easier than the complexities of choosing the data itself. So if you're a layman and you're thinking that you can interpret the results of a study better than people that went through the problems of like picking out like the appropriate multivariate analysis and everything, instead of you think you can do that better, the interpretation, chances are, unless you have a really big background in this particular research, you're not going to be able to do that 9 times out of 10. And I've gotten warned about that by a couple of people that like, unless this is like actually your field, you have to be really careful about just going into a study and saying, oh, well, like I can actually interpret the data better than the researchers themselves could. Because if you don't trust the researchers themselves to interpret the data, why would you trust them to pick the variables and do the study at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Um, do you think that it's well, let's put it this way. Emotional attachment to our beliefs can often prevent us from changing our minds. So, do we get rid of the emotional attachment, or is there a different strategy that you use?
So I like the, this is like this is a fundamentally deeper question about how we view ourselves in the world. Without getting too far into it, I am a human being, and there are things that I like and things that I like to do. But I try not to make these things a part of who I am. So, like for instance, like I'm a person that enjoys playing video games, and I see myself as that. I don't see myself as like a gamer, or like I'm a person that enjoys music. I don't see myself as a musician. Now, I might like flub the words here every now and then, but I think it's important to separate who you are essentially from some of the ideas you have, because when you take these ideas and you make them a part of who you are, it can become really hard to move off of those ideas if later data shows that they are bad. And you can see a lot of this in relation to the coronavirus stuff, whether it's people that got a little bit too religiously attached to like lockdowns or masking or whatever, or people that got a little bit too attached to alternative medications like hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, rather than people saying like, oh, I think this is good, or oh, like I think this is an okay thing. It became a big part of their identity. And once something has been baked into your identity, it's very hard for that to become changed. It becomes like an immutable part of who you are, and it like and like an attack on that idea becomes an attack on your character. So yeah, I think you have to be really careful not to like essentialize ideas and take them and make them part of who you are, because if it turns out later on that there is some part of this data or some data comes out that shows that this idea is bad, you're never going to be able to move off of it because it's become like a part of you, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes in the field that I'm in, there are some very sensational type claims that come up. You know, like about like the technology of ancient people or things like that. The
Mm-hmm.
very common notion is that maybe there was a lost advanced civilization that was destroyed in a cataclysm, and we haven't, we're just finding out about it. But they had, it depends, there's all kinds of different points of view on this. Like, some people think that they had really advanced technology. Some people say that, well, it was just more advanced than what we think people had in the Stone Age. But do you find that the more sensational the claims are about anything, the less believable it is?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I'm an old, I went to a Catholic school growing up, and I was very much in my like late teens, one of those very adamant like atheists. So there's like a lot of dogma that I picked up in my very anti-religious days that I would probably apply to claims today. Like one of those claims, every growing up atheist heard this: extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So yeah, if somebody's making a claim that seems like relatively extraordinary, I'm probably going to ask for like, okay, well, what is the evidence for this claim? Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Should people focus more on who they get their information from, or on the evidence itself? Like I see a lot of people focusing on the who. Like, what is your source? If you want to find out information, you go to a good source, and the source will give you reliable information. So just find someone that you can trust. Is that your approach?
It's going to depend on, it's really going to depend. It's going to depend. The reality is that at some point you're going to have to trust sources, because we don't have time in our lives to become an expert on every single topic. So building up a repertoire of sources we can trust, I think, is important. Once you get more into a particular topic, maybe then you can like dig through the information yourself, but it's going to come down to like how much time you can allot to researching something to become comfortable enough to like actually dig through the sources themselves and critique the researchers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you feel like there are team sports in information gathering?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. It's a hugely team sports thing. Yeah, you can tell that like as soon as some people bring things up, like they're basically looking immediately to like, is this the progressive agenda or is this the conservative agenda or whatever? And they're trying to figure out like what side of the team or what side of the argument they should be on, just based on who's said something. Like I've had people say to me, like, people will sometimes immediately discount an argument I've made, like, oh, like I think this is like a whatever, and like that sounds like a conservative argument. I was like, okay, so does that make it wrong intrinsically? Like that's not you're not even responding to what I'm saying. People are very quick to kind of like draw the battle lines and then, line up on either side, and they will wholly embrace or reject a given idea or agenda just based on who they think it's coming from, rather than the merits of the idea itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I have people sometimes will say something like, well, you're just saying that because you're an X, whatever it might be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, this is something that I hear. You may not hear this a lot. I don't know. But I want to get your take on it. If you hear someone say, academics are falsifying history to preserve their power. I've gotten this many, many times about ancient history. I want to talk about ancient history. The archaeologists, the historians, okay? They're deliberately misleading us. Because there's of some power trip they might have. How does a statement like that strike you?
That would depend on who it's coming from for me to evaluate what is actually being said and what the claims are being made, to understand why somebody might say that. It would just depend on who it's coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. It's usually from people that don't want to believe what their teachers told them in school. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, it would just depend. So like, for instance, one really contentious thing that comes up a lot is like, I'm hitting on a lot of super contentious topics. I don't know if your community normally deals with those, so I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. I have people from all stripes here, so I
sure.
don't. Yeah, I don't.
So
know
like one thing that used to come up a lot in circles is like, were Egyptians black? There's a really big, I'll say like an alt-right dog whistle, where they say we was Kangs, and it's their way of making fun of black people that try to like take credit for Egypt, and they think that's all fake or whatever. So people that are fighting on both sides of that, like if somebody were to say like, if anybody were to say anything about like ancient Rome or Egypt, and it's like, oh, well, these, societies were somewhat multicultural, if that was the claim or whatever. And I don't even know well enough to truly know either of that. But if somebody were to make that claim and somebody were to immediately come out offhand and be like, oh, you're just trying to uphold the academic establishment, like the SJWs, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, this guy's just trying to hand wave that away because he doesn't like He doesn't like that interpretation of history, basically. So he's trying to discredit the researcher, saying that he's part of like the academic institutions trying to hold down or propagate whatever ideology that they're opposed to today.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that if people want to find out more about a subject, it is good for them to watch a debate?
Um,
Or are debates not the place to go?
so the way I would say almost definitely not. But I say that hesitantly because there might be like really interesting or good debaters. It's like debate can be like so many different things. That like debate can be like screaming matches between two people where somebody's just really trying to like, win through a whole bunch of tactics over the other person. A debate could be like a really good faith conversation between two people. So it really depends on like the debate. Like I've had some conversations that I think are pretty educational. There's been a disagreement between me and another person. They've been relatively well researched, and we kind of get into the weeds on like, oh, like this is where we disagree on this and that. Now, this is few and far between. I would say like 95% of my debates are absolutely trash when it comes to education, because they get mired down very quickly in personal attacks and ad hominems or in non-research based related arguments, just like conspiracy theory. So it's really going to depend on the type of debate and who's talking and what the subject is.
Sometimes you'll hear this is a common refrain I see in talking about debates, is they'll use the expression "bad faith," okay, or disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
How do you tell when someone's arguing in bad faith? Are there signs?
Yeah, for sure there's signs. I'm trying to think. It's really going to depend on the conversation. I normally am very hesitant to accuse people of being bad faith because once you've done that, the conversation is essentially over.
So you just assume that you assume they're being honest and sincere in their.
Yeah, you kind of have to because once you've made the assumption of bad faith, the conversation's over. It's going to become a personal attack match, basically, mudslinging.
So you think it's just it's wise to just assume they believe what they're saying and to approach them in that way.
Yeah, you should treat everybody like an honest interlocutor, basically. Yeah, and then just go from there and see how that.
Okay, all right. How do you make sure that your conclusions don't overreach the evidence that you've gathered? Some people go further than what the evidence might indicate.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make sure you don't do that?
There's a lot of like random concepts I'm familiar with to try to avoid stuff like this. Are you familiar with like? Have you ever heard of something called like evolutionary psychology?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of something called a just so story?
No.
Okay, so this is something that I think people need to be careful of a lot. I bet this comes up in history a lot. It must. But a just so story is basically if I take a collection of facts and I try to spin a narrative saying this happened because of this and this happened because of this, more often than not, just so stories are entirely baseless conjecture. It's just what you think. And it's not actually supported by the data. So an evo-psych example of this might be, I'm making stuff up now, right? But an evo-psych example of this might be, I'm trying to think, I'm trying to think of examples that won't be really contentious, but I can't. Okay, like let's say like men have big muscles. Okay, that's true. Maybe men have big muscles, and also men tend to like hunt animals in the past. I don't know if it was women and men or if it was just men. We'll say men hunted in the past.
Mostly men were hunters.
Sure, yeah. Gotcha. It might be the case that somebody might look at this and say, "Oh, well, I'm going to say that natural selection made it so that men were selected to have big muscles because they were going to hunt. That was a causal thing. We needed hunters, therefore muscles evolved, and that's the reason why." But the reality is it's a just so story. You don't actually know if that's the case. It might be the case, for instance, that when our species, because we're sexually dimorphic, maybe in order to sustain enough sperm production to have an offspring, maybe like testosterone has to be processed in the body. And like a byproduct of that was that we grew big muscles. But maybe way long ago, maybe it wasn't the case that we needed to hunt that much at all. Or maybe we hunted as groups, or maybe we did more berry picking and we didn't really need muscles, but they kind of came as a byproduct of something else. And then we found a way to use those to do something else, right? That might be the case. I'm only speaking in hypothetical. I don't know the fact of the matter, but I'm just saying that sometimes people will take a collection of facts and they'll try to string them together to say like this happened because of this. This is really common in conspiracy theory as well. And when I say conspiracy theory, what I mean is like a baseless accusation that there's a greater plot behind the scenes that people can't see. Somebody might say, hey, here's a quote by X, here's a quote by Y, here's a quote by Z. Now here's an action by nations A and B, and then boom, there's a plot. And you're like, well, wait a second, where's the plot? Well, if I look at these quotes and I look at the action of these nations, I bet that they're working together to do this or that. It's like, well, have you established that at all? Like, is there any evidence linking any of these things together? It's like, well, no, but I mean, it fits, right? So I think that that's something that people need to be careful of, is creating like these stories that you take like a mapping of facts and you try to draw a constellation between them that isn't necessarily supported by the data. That's one thing to be really careful of when you're trying to make like overarching conclusions or statements about like things that are going on.
Mm-hmm. That does actually happen in my field more than you'd think it was, especially when we're talking to the alternative history people.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let me ask you this. Historians, archaeologists, scientists, they've all been wrong before. So why should we trust anything they have to say? I've had people say this, so I'm asking what your thoughts on this.
Do you know who Asimov is, a science fiction writer?
Mm-hmm.
He has a really, really good essay called The Relativity of Wrongness, I think. Have you ever read this?
I don't think I have.
I ultra recommend it. It's like, I think it's like 2 pages maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what he talks about is, it basically goes something like this, okay? Flat earthers weren't really super wrong. Flat earthers were actually relatively intelligent. The idea of taking an incredibly varied landscape of the earth and assuming, maybe if we stretch this out across all of the planet, it's relatively the same plane. That's not actually that wrong of a claim, because if the earth is spherical, you only need to adjust that flat earth by a degree or something, or like 1/8 of a degree or something, to make it around Earth. So that flat Earth is relative. It's more correct than thinking the Earth is just crazy random hills and valleys. And then when you move from flat Earth to like a spherical Earth, that's something that's slightly more correct, but it's still not 100% correct, because the Earth is not a perfect sphere, as some people might have thought a long time ago. It's like an oblate sphere or something.
Sphere.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, an obloid sphere or something, which is more correct. So I think that when people look at science being incorrect, I think that everybody, not just anti-science or pro-science, but I think everybody sometimes has a mistake that like science is some ultimate like arbiter of like truth and fact, when in reality, science is just a process. Science is a process by which we gather information and evaluate the world. And hopefully, over time, our evaluations become more and more resembling of some ultimate fact of the matter, hopefully, depending on how deep you want to go there. So anytime people are saying, well, science was wrong about here, science was wrong about, okay, well, why was it wrong, right? Are we on the road to getting a more correct answer? Like science, we're not always going to be 100% correct about everything. The goal is just that over time, hopefully we're making progress towards some of these more factually accurate things, I guess is like how I would try to phrase it.
Yeah. How often do you change your mind? And do you change it more now or less now than you used to change it?
I mean, I don't change my mind too often, but I try to make sure that I'm relatively well researched in an area before I start giving strong opinions on it. But I mean, it still happens. There will be times when I do more research and I find I'm wrong about something, or I'll argue with somebody that brings up some really good points and I have to change my position because they were correct and I wasn't. So I mean, it happens.
There must have been a time though when you changed your mind a lot, right? Because everybody's like finding themselves at some point in their life, like, what do I believe about this? Wouldn't that be a more fluid state back then? And then as you gradually firm up your positions, and things become clearer, then you start to slow down?
Probably. Yeah, I would hope. But yeah, it's just going to depend on like the environment that I'm in. Like once I started to get into online debating, I would hope that I'm doing a bit of research in my opinions before forming strong opinions. Otherwise, my opinions are going to be a little bit more fluid until I've come across good data. So I try not to take a strong position on something unless I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of it. That's just the nature of what I do online. Because if I'm staking out these really strong positions and I've done no research, I'm going to look like an idiot and lose my credibility, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just irresponsible because, yeah.
I'm sure though on minor subjects there might be points where you're like someone will bring something out and you're like, oh really? And then you look it up and you're like, oh, okay, all right, well I'll give you that one, right?
Yeah,
That
for
must
sure.
happen.
Yeah,
Right.
that definitely happens. But I would say the difference is like on those things, I try not to have a strong position first. I'll just say, and it's really hard for normal humans to do this, and it's even harder for online people to do this. Sometimes people are really uncomfortable just saying, like, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion. I feel totally fine doing that. Sometimes there's breaking news stuff. Sometimes stuff will come up. Be like, what do you think about this? Like, I don't know. I haven't really researched any of this. I don't really know. I don't have a strong opinion. I'm okay saying that. I know that a lot of people can't for a variety of reasons, but yeah, I think it's good to be able to admit the limits of your knowledge. Sometimes can be knowing the limits of your knowledge can be more important sometimes than having knowledge, just so you don't overstep or overstate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would guess that because whatever opinion we might have is informed by quite a number of different pieces of evidence. In
Mm-hmm.
order to have a change of mind on that one bigger subject, you'd have to have a lot changed in the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas to have our mind changed about one piece of evidence would be easier because it's just one fact, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Let's see. What if you are forced to a conclusion that goes against your deeply held values or beliefs?
So something that I tell people is, this is screaming into the abyss, but like, I think that you should spend at least a little bit, like, really firmly investigating your ethics. Um, Political positions should be really, really far downstream from your personal ethical positions. And a lot of people sometimes will just copy political positions without really having their ethics thought out. And if that's the case, then you're going to run into issues where it's like, I can't do this. Like, this would mean that I hate gay people or I hate poor people or I can't believe that thing. Like, I can't possibly turn against it. And I think the reason why is because people just don't have their fundamentals thought out very well. I've thought a lot about my personal ethical positions. If I find out that there's something that I believe in, some like political position I believe in, and it turns out there's a better way to satisfy my ethical positions with something different, I have no problem changing. I'm not married to those political positions, Like I describe myself as I'm a really ardent capitalist. And I'm a very big, like, I think market forces and everything are good. I think we can utilize these to solve problems. But if it came out, let's say hypothetically tomorrow, there was the mother of all studies came out and it proved socialism is the better economic organization than capitalism, 100% proven. I would just switch. I'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine. Because I'm not married to capitalism as like an ethical belief. I'm married to the idea that I want, the best outcomes for the most amount of people. And that's something that can be achieved through different means. Yeah, the way that I say this is like, don't be married to the process, be married to the outcome. Your goal should be to achieve good outcomes, not just use a particular process because you get attached to it.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah. How do you know when you've done enough research on a subject to be
Well, for
able to
me, it's
draw
when
a
I
conclusion?
don't lose any debates on it. um, I don't know, man. Have you ever really done enough? I don't know if you've ever really. I don't know if I'm comfortable saying like, oh, well, this is when you've done
Yeah, yeah.
enough. Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
I
there's
mean,
always stuff to learn
done
about. Yeah.
enough to be able to draw a conclusion and saying, I tentatively think this.
Well, I think it's going to depend on. It'll depend on the subject. It'll wildly depend on the subject. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if I could generalize that. For medical stuff, it might be never. So like I brought up like alternative treatments for the coronavirus a few times. I don't know if I'll ever say like this medication will never work for COVID-19 because I don't know if that's how medicine works. It might be in the case that in the future some research changes that. But for a historical fact or historical argument, like was Russia justified in invading Ukraine or in Georgia or Moldova? I think I pronounce this wrong all the time. Whatever. But like when you get into things like this, there's probably some level of information that you can gain. You're like, okay, I feel pretty comfortable like having a strong position on this or that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to super depend on the particular subject.
Do you ever go back to a subject, or do you like once you finish and you've done a debate on it or whatever, you're like, okay, I'm done with that one. I'm not going back to it, and then you never return, or do you sometimes return to old research subjects?
It just depends on the subject.
Okay.
Some stuff is like very contemporary and probably won't be brought up again. Other stuff gets brought up over and over and over and over and over again. It just depends on the subject. Yeah.
Hmm. Is there something related to information gathering or even debating or anything that, this is a personal question, that you would want to be better at?
I want to be
Or you're like,
better at.
I'm good, man.
I guess being able to go through formal literature is always a pro. I've been engaging more directly with studies past just reading abstracts and conclusions.
Hmm.
Oh, actually, I know the one thing I need to improve at. I need to go take one of these. I need to take a stats course
Or stats,
to
yeah.
truly understand like what does it mean when you cross the null, or like what is statistically significant effect size, like all of these. Like I need to take like a formal stats course. One day I'll do this online. I
It
figure I
would
can do it
come
in
in
probably
handy.
a
Yeah,
month or
I
two.
feel the same
Yeah.
way. I'm actually, I got into a video essay debate about stats with regard
Mm-hmm.
to ancient history, believe it or not.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's a very tricky topic.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about alternative media? You know,
I generally have super negative opinions of it. But I mean, I'm alternative media technically, right? So I can't hate all of it.
yeah, I guess, yeah, YouTube is alternative media.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I mean, like the establishments that are like deliberately set up against mainstream. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I think my two biggest problems with alternative media are there's two huge things. One is I don't think you should ever define yourself in contrast to your opposition. So like if the mainstream media says XYZ, I'm gonna believe in ABC. Or like if they
mhm.
say that, I'm gonna believe the opposite of that, which is what it feels like sometimes. A lot of alternative media is like, well, CNN said this or Fox News said this, so I think it's actually this. I know this is the truth, right? It's like the rebellious teenager thing where your parents say one thing, so you're going to believe the exact opposite. I think that's really dumb. I don't think you should ever let people control you that way. That's the first issue that I have with a lot of alternative media. The second issue that I have is the lack of accountability. Oh my God. When I listen to some of these alternative media, like I pride myself generally on if I'm going to make predictions, I'm usually right. And if I'm talking about things, I'm generally like fact based. When I listen to some alternative media outlets talk about some things, it is unbelievable to me how much they will just get blatantly wrong, whether it's making totally baseless or horrible predictions or just having no understanding of the fact of the matter of what they're talking about. And they just do it again and again and again and again with zero accountability. They'll be wrong and they just immediately move on to the next thing. That's probably the two biggest problems I have with a lot of alternative media.
Do you think an emphasis on getting views and clicks harms the search for correct information?
I mean a little bit. I don't actually fault like mainstream or alternative media for being the way that they are. I think that the fault lies with consumers. I think that when people are consuming information, they're looking for entertainment first, and factual accuracy is way, 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 way. I'm not even going to say second. It's like 50 places behind. People want to be entertained, and people want to hear their own biases kind of like confirmed um, or validated, and people will search for media that way rather than looking for something that truly challenges them. It's
Hmm.
funny because people will complain about how like kids today have huge problems with dealing with challenges in their life. We lack resiliency. I say we, no, I'll say Zoomers. They lack resiliency or they don't have the ability to challenge themselves. And I think that is largely true. I think a lot of college kids today have big problems with that. I think there's huge problems there. But it's true of adults as well. A lot of people don't like to challenge their viewpoints. They find the media that tells them what they want to hear. They follow politicians that tell them what they want to hear. They very rarely engage with the other side of the argument. And everything just becomes like a giant hug box everywhere. That's true of like, I think college today. I think it's true of media platforms today. People just don't like their viewpoints challenged. It feels bad. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm trying to do this on my channel. Is to get
Mm-hmm.
people to think outside. A lot of people. There actually have been several people who have come to me and said, "I once believed X, but because of your videos, I now believe Y," which makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd never want it to become like where, because people love my video essays where I debunk other people the best. These ones get the
Okay.
most views.
Sure.
And instead of just, if I just talked at the camera and whatever and told people what I thought, which I do in other videos, that's fine. But people love it when I go after somebody, and
Yeah,
I
of
always
course.
wonder, like, is that good? I don't know, but they
The
really like it.
conflict and the confrontation is really
They
fun.
like the
Yeah. I
conversation.
mean,
So Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
the entertainment factor, I guess.
Hmm. But I mean, like at the very least, we should have a responsibility. Like that's my biggest content is going to be debating, of course. Like people want to see that, but I would hope that like just don't sacrifice the your veracity of information presentation just because you want to be entertaining. And that's what I try. Like I'll debate and shout at people. That's fun for me, but I'm not compromising. Hopefully, I don't think I am. I'm compromising any of my fact finding abilities or my presentations just to make things entertaining. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and one thing I have liked about your debates is you're always the same in them. I mean, you may respond differently to different people you're talking with, but you your positions tend to be consistent across all of your discussions, right? You don't change your what you say, what you act like you believe something different just because of who you happen to be talking to, right? You're always you.
Yeah.
You're always you.
I would hope so, yeah. But I think that this stems from like I've got an internal ethical foundation from which all of my social and political positions come from. So hopefully it's consistent throughout like all of my different beliefs. Like if you ask me like how I treat my employees or how I conduct business, hopefully that synergizes well with what I say we ought to do in society, or how I treat people in my personal life, or how I treat
Yeah.
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 Like
Do you don't do you would say you don't put on a persona when you're online, right? Or do you?
um no, I don't think so. I don't. I'm a pretty
Or do you
genuine person.
exaggerate a little? I don't know.
I mean, like we engage differently with different people. So I
Yeah.
mean, like there's going to be some difference, right? Like I don't treat my, wife like I would treat, somebody I'm screaming at in a debate. But I think I'm a pretty genuine person. My engagement is pretty similar. If you meet me in real life, I'll be pretty similar to how I am online.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean I'm going to start like screaming at you like we're in the middle of a heated conversation or something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Those are all the questions I had for you. I don't know if you have anything to say in conclusion, but anyone who has not seen Destiny's channel, go check it out. It's called Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are watching me on Destiny's channel, come check me out. I'm called World of Antiquity, and I have videos on ancient history that you might like.
What
But
do
if
you what is your like are you like a specialist in some forms of ancient
Yeah.
history? You like okay, what's your area of expertise? I'm curious.
Well, my academic study in grad school was mainly on the ancient Near East, So the Assyrians and Babylonians, Egyptians and Hittites, all those people in that area. But
Mm-hmm.
since I teach, at the college, and I've become kind of a generalist since I got my PhD. So anything ancient, I'm interested in that period I told you about across the
Gotcha.
world, because I like to know what people are doing over here when the people over here are doing this. You know what I mean? And I like to compare. So I've become kind of a generalist in ancient studies. But go past the year 600 and I'm in the dark. So I know a little, but I mean,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Well, I'm interested since you've been on both sides of it. I'm sure I know you've heard of the book Guns, Germs, and Steel, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I read this book, and then because after I read something, I like to go and find like, well, what are the critiques of it? Do people think it's good or bad? Something that I stumbled into that I didn't realize existed was a huge debate between generalists and specialists, or it seemed like, at least online, that was the impression I got, that people like that generalists can synthesize information across different disciplines and give you like a cohesive story about things, and specialists will endlessly kind of nitpick like, well, this isn't true, or you were wrong on this, or this isn't actually technically true. Is that like an actual thing in the academic world that people argue about, or is it just like an online debate, or do you have any feelings on that? Or
I think it's not like a big thing that's everyone talks about or anything. I
mm-hmm.
think it's just a general thing that happens. It automatically, when someone is who knows a subject very deeply but not very broadly, they're going to see it differently than someone who looks at things broadly but they don't know it very deeply. So they can
Mm-hmm.
inform each other, but I think definitely there will be times where they disagree or butt heads about it because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't like, oh, it's another. There's the generalist and the specialist going at it again. I don't think that really happens.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah.
um okay. You
Uh,
do ancient history. Do you find that people ask you questions a lot about ancient history that is like they're trying to relate the topics back to modern political topics, or are they mainly just like kind of history nerds, or
some
how do you
people
feel about it?
do. Some people do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that because it is true you can learn from history about human nature, But I mean, I don't agree with the people who say like, well, you know, if you study the past, you can learn the future or something like. I mean, things happen over and over again, but never in the exact same way. And there's always
Mm-hmm.
different factors at play, so you can't really predict what would happen based on the past. And also, you know, you hear people say, if we study history, we'll if we don't study history, we'll be doomed to
Doomed to
repeat the
repeat it.
mistakes of the
Yeah.
past. And I don't think that's true either because, I mean, kids are forced to take history in school, and they've been for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't seem to have any effect. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, when you say, oh, when I grow up, I'm not going to be like my parents, and then you are. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that with history, with society. It's like, oh, we learned about these mistakes people made in the past in history, and then we just forget about it and end up doing it again anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do think, and people have asked about this, that you know, when you're studying a particular subject, our forces at play there that are also in play in our society, that the one can inform the other. Yeah, I think that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and you might be able to learn from that. I don't do a lot of that on here
Mm-hmm.
because um, people get mad at me if I get political, you know.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So I tend not to, but it can be done, and there are historians who are very keen on doing that.
Mm-hmm. What are like one or two big misconceptions you think that the average person has about ancient history that you wish you could erase from people's minds? Or do you think these big misconceptions exist or?
There are a few big ones. One big one that I get a lot is thinking that people who lived back then were so primitive and we're so much more advanced than they were. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That they were dumb and or they just didn't understand things like we do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a conceit, but they're the same kinds of people with the same kinds of brains, and they were just as smart, and they were able to do great things. Um, so I think that's one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hear people all the time using the word primitive to refer to them, and they're
Yeah,
not
to people
primitive.
in like the year like 300 or whatever, and it's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
although
like these
yeah,
people had like plumbing and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they also when they categorize them, even as far as their society, their technology, all that, they always put it in very simplistic terms, like they were just a very simple people. But
Mm-hmm.
no, society was very complex in those days, just as complex as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one misconception I would say. Um, what's another common misconception about the ancients? Um, about specific things, maybe. You know.
Here's a specific question.
Okay.
I've already brought up a million contentious topics, so I'm okay. We'll just sink the whole conversation
Oh,
on it. You are you a religious person at all?
I am. My. Well, let's put it this way. My channel is completely secular, and
Okay.
I
Gotcha.
don't like to share that stuff because it's like we were talking about before. People
Hmm.
will say, "Oh, you just said that because of X. You're X." You know what I
Sure.
mean? I don't want that to happen. So you know, whether I say I believe something or don't believe something,
Hmm.
um, I don't want people doing that. So that's why I just don't talk about it.
Gotcha. Something that I was curious about is, I guess it's not as, how long has your YouTube channel been in existence for?
I started it in July of 2019, so almost 3 years.
Okay. So you weren't around for the big atheist wars on YouTube.
No, no. Although I know a little bit of some of the things that happened, but
Hmm.
yeah, my channel wasn't around at that time.
Gotcha. I would have been curious if people would have shown up on your channel as an ancient history person, asking you questions about like,
Oh,
Jesus
oh
and
yeah. Well,
Muhammad and where these
I
people.
still get questions like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I do, I treat all of those subjects, whether it be Jesus or well, I don't do Muhammad because he's not ancient, but anything
Hmm.
related to ancient China or India, all of the beliefs that they have, um,
Hmm.
the same way. I just use the same principles, the same methods, historical method for studying them all. I don't
Hmm.
favor one over the other because historians have to be consistent across the board. You know.
Yeah. Um, Final question. Are you public about what college you teach at?
State College of Florida, Manatee, Sarasota.
Do you
Um,
know, well, somebody in my chat wants to know if you know David Anthony. My anthropology professor in college. I
Oh,
don't know if he goes there or
no,
not, but
I don't know David Anthony. Sorry to
okay,
say.
gotcha. Just thought I'd ask for my
Okay.
guy I was going to chat. Okay. Well, cool. Listen, anything else
I
or
guess that's it. We're not too far away, so maybe next time I'm down the southern part of Florida, I'll look you up.
yeah, sure. Cool. Sounds good.
But thank you so much. I appreciate you talking with me today. I know you didn't have to. There's so many other people that probably want to chat with you, but I appreciate it.
No, it's cool. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, everybody. How'd you like that? Were you interested in that conversation? Let me get myself full screen again here. Um, I didn't have time to really look at any of your comments going by during that discussion. I'm sure they were entertaining. Maybe I'll look at them afterwards. But I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Was it what you expected? Were you thinking it would be something different, or was it kind of along the lines of what you thought was going to go down? Great conversation. Awesome. Wow, that was cool. It was pretty interesting. It was fun. I liked it. Yeah, it was interesting. Okay, good, good. Glad you liked. It was okay. Always got to be somebody, right, Nathan? Great conversation. Um, thanks for teaching him how reading papers works. His comprehension is annoyingly simple. I didn't get that impression, but great convo. Destiny was a great guest. Good chat. Yeah, I really enjoyed the back and forth. That's okay. I'm glad you liked it. All right. Well, I guess that's about it for our live stream today, folks. If you like this live stream, definitely hit the like button, and I'll be doing more. Depends, how many people were. I didn't even look at like how many viewers were on at the peak, but I'll check that stuff out later. Last time I had almost 300 as a peak at any given time, but I don't know if I did as well this time. I hope I did. We will see. Okay. Well, anyway, all of you have a great day, and